making 5 obscura paintings for a client.
Handle it, Trana.
No!
Greetings and welcome to the third part of this review of Lara Croft Tomb Raider: The Angel of Darkness. We've looked at the good, the sort of good, and we've looked at the bad. Now we need to look at why this game ended up the way it did. The short answer is, it's not finished. Oh, that was a quick video. Wait, no. It's not enough to say it's unfinished. People who defend this game always use that as an excuse for the condition it's in. It's debatable as to who's to blame for this, core design or IDOS. Let's start with IDOS. There are two main things I'd like to highlight here. First, a lot of the things that don't feel terribly Tomb Raider were included at the insistence of IDOS. A second playable character, interactions with other characters, optional dialogue, decision making about what routes to take, basically the kind of things that were going on in gaming at the time were, quote, shoehorned into Angel of Darkness. Once again, I feel the need to stress that they are not all bad ideas. In fact, some of them have become staple features in games now. But they feel shoehorned in. They feel like a failed attempt to stay current and fresh. The head of core design, Jeremy Heath-Smith, has said he should have probably stood his ground more, but ultimately gave in to IDOS's demands. Secondly, by all accounts, IDOS relied on that sweet, sweet Tomb Raider money to bring in a profit. Where core design were quite happy to call it a day after Tomb Raider 2, IDOS kept pressuring them to make another, and another, and another. Chronicles came out in 2000, and Angel of Darkness was originally planned for a Christmas of 2002 release. That, of course, didn't happen because the game wasn't finished. IDOS needed the game to come out by the end of the fiscal year, so they put their foot down. Heath-Smith objected, saying they needed another 6 months to finish the game. IDOS didn't want to hear it. Core were, as they put it, forced to take a machete to the game, hacking and slashing it to pieces, then shoving it on discs in time for the release. Nowadays we'd have day one patches, not that that's necessarily a good thing, but back then if your game wasn't finished, it was never going to be finished. It will not surprise you to learn that IDOS didn't see it that way. Ian Livingston, who was on the board, stated that core design were given 3 years to make Angel of Darkness, and they failed. In the end, pressure from the market and consumers forced them to release the game. So, in other words, it wasn't their fault that they were being forced to release a shoddy product, it was core design's. So if it is core's fault, how did it happen? The original Tomb Raider was made by 6 people. This was a time in which small teams could make a game that would go on to do phenomenally well. As the series progressed, the team grew, but not by much. A grand total of 15 people made Chronicles. This was not the case going into the PlayStation 2 era. The scale of these games demanded a larger staff. Angel of Darkness began with 35 members of staff, small by PlayStation 2 standards, but big by core design standards. Wesley Yin-Pool's excellent 20th anniversary article summed it up perfectly. The Angel of Darkness's disastrous development was down to a lack of structure and a failure of management. Core had no idea how to manage a product of its size. Staff were rudderless and demotivated. The game was too ambitious, it tried to do too many different things. Gavin Rummery rejoined core design in 2002 as a tech director and says he went round in circles trying to find the people who were in charge. No one wanted to take responsibility for the utter mess that had become the Angel of Darkness's development. They were all exhausted from working in a constant crunch for several years and, unsurprisingly, everyone's morale was at rock bottom. Then, after years of fighting against the pressure from IDOS, they were told the game was being released whether they liked it or not. The Machete came out, and they hacked and slashed the game into what has been described as a shadow of what it could have been. So who is to blame? Eidos for making them add extra content and then releasing it knowing it was unfinished? Or Core Design for mismanaging a large team to such an extent they couldn't get a game finished in 3 years? I personally think if you want to play the blame game, it goes both ways. But fans have a lot of affection for Core Design, so Eidos tend to be the ones portrayed as the bad guys. In doing the research for these videos, I did find it interesting to learn about the stuff that was cut or incomplete, as it helped to paint a picture of what the game could have been. Remember the pointless boxing match? That was meant to be a way for Lara to learn some hand-to-hand combat skills.
I feel stronger now.
This nonsense was meant to be the final stage of a much bigger levelling up process. In fact, Adrian Smith spoke in numerous interviews about how there would be different ways to navigate the environment depending on how you levelled up Lara. One player might be able to climb something because they levelled up upper body strength, while another might be able to jump over a large gap because they levelled up the legs. There was meant to be more detail on what happened to Lara in Egypt, including an FMV released years later that showed Lara with a shaman priestess. Remember in the Paris sections when Lara would surrender to the police and it would be game over? There were plans that she would be taken to a nearby jail and would have to break out of it. Ren's pawn shop allowed you to sell and buy stuff. More interestingly, you could also save up your money and use it to bribe the guards into looking the other way. Unfortunately, when you hack out a lot of stuff from a game, what's left behind is going to suffer. Yes, Ren's pawn shop is still there, but all you can do is sell stuff. The whole game is riddled with problems that highlight the choppy, unfinished, unpolished nature of the final game. I've already pointed out some examples in previous videos, but here's some more. Lara gets knocked unconscious, and when she wakes up, she's wearing her sunglasses. She's wearing trousers at the end of one level and shorts at the beginning of the next. In dialogue sequences, the move from one chunk of dialogue to the other is often painfully obvious.
I'm not going to waste any more time here. Do you have the notebook?
Have you ever noticed that Janice, Francine and Boaz have the same face with a few changes? Yes, that's right, 3 of the 5 female characters in this game are just copycat templates of one another. The transitions from game to cutscene or vice versa are rarely smooth. The cleaner is shot by Lara and is then magically at the bottom of the stairs. Lara knocks out Bouchard and then he's magically tied to a radiator. And my personal favourite.
What the hell's going on around here?
Let's see if he's got keys to this place.
There is a lack of obvious actions. Lara says she can't do certain things because she's not strong enough, but we never see her actually try.
It won't budge. I need to increase my strength.
When Lara and Bouchard are in the car together, the background isn't moving. There are numerous times when the character's lips don't move. For example,
Welcome to Paris.
Seller's market, I'm afraid.
as you can imagine, when the game was finally released, it was met with not good reviews. I could quote endless reviews at you, but they're all saying the same basic thing. It should have been so much better than it was. The only positive review I was able to find came from Maxim magazine, but they weren't too focused on the game mechanics. The response to Angel of Darkness was dire, so much so that when Lara Croft Tomb Raider The Cradle of Life bombed, Paramount were quick to blame the negative response to Angel of Darkness as a key reason as to why. It was a mere 2 weeks after the game's release that Jeremy Heath Smith felt his position was untenable and resigned. With him out of the way, Eidos were free to take the franchise away from Core Design and hand it over to Crystal Dynamics. It was the end of an era. And you know what? No one cared. Core Design were actually glad to be rid of Tomb Raider. They were burnt out after years of making game after game after game. Not only were they out of ideas, but a small studio having a big franchise can be a curse as much as a blessing, as it leaves little room for developers to work on new IPs. This was a new beginning for Core Design, a chance to create something new and fresh without Lara bloody Croft hanging over their heads. Eidos asked them to submit new ideas. They got 30 in a fortnight. The fact that no one much cared about losing Tomb Raider was a sad thing to learn about, but perhaps what was sadder was seeing the amount of bitching that went on between staff and former staff. Jeremy Heath Smith formed a new company called Circle and took a lot of his colleagues with him. In an interview he asserted that what was left of Core Design was floundering with no leadership. This in turn led some of his former colleagues to snipe back about the dismal response to Circle's first game without warning. But there was generally a positive buzz within Core Design during this time. They had made it big once and they would do it again. Yeah, well, they didn't. Smart Bomb, bombed. The response to free running was a bit meh. And because it was going to take Crystal Dynamics a bit of time to get Tomb Raider Legend out, Eidos needed money. Core Design were sold to Rebellion and rebranded as Rebellion Derby. They limped on for a while after that, making the not universally loved Shell-Shock Blood Trails, and in 2010 they were shut down. That's the legacy of Angel of Darkness, the death of Core Design. If the original game caused the company to be boosted to the top tier of game developers, Angel of Darkness brought them crashing back down. There was a time when I hated this game, absolutely hated it. Now I just feel a kind of weary disappointment. Every now and again I'll find myself thinking about St. Francis Folly or Barkham Monastery or the Temple of Karnak, and I'll go back and replay those games. This never happens with Angel of Darkness. I first played it in 2004 and then shelved it for 6 years until I made those old videos between 2010 and 2012. I didn't play it again until 2019 when I recorded my Let's Play, and again this year when getting footage for these videos. This is not a game I ever return to when I think about, say, the Hall of Seasons. In fact, this is a game I rarely think about at all. While I do think that there was a lot of blame on both sides, I also think that if Jeremy Heath Smith had gotten his extra 6 months, Angel of Darkness probably would have still been a bit rubbish. Core were burnt out. The franchise being passed on to Crystal Dynamics was probably for the best creatively. And if you're somebody who thinks Eidos is the bad guy, consider this. A lot of great gaming series put out a game that bombs critically and then they're never heard from again. I think we should all be grateful that all Angel of Darkness did was slowly kill Core Design. It could have killed Tomb Raider. Eidos could have said, "Oh, I guess Tomb Raider's had its day." Thankfully they gave it another shot. And I'll tell you something else. None of these games are perfect. Whether it's possible for a game to even be perfect is debatable. But none of them are bad the way Angel of Darkness is bad. I'd play all of them 10 times over before I play Angel of Darkness again. But I'd keep the volume down on Legend, obviously. But I should say, if you're somebody who likes Angel of Darkness, that's totally cool. I have games I love that others hate. Every criticism of Dragon Age 2 is absolutely valid, but the story and the characters are so good, I don't care about its shortcomings. I can absolutely see where Angel of Darkness had the potential to be a great game, but I can only judge it based on the final product. That being said, there is one final video to come, for now anyway, in which I go through Murty Schofield's documents and talk about the bits that stood out to me, and generally get frustrated about what this game could have been.